He was really honest, and those stories were always so compelling. I think fame still resonates 3 decades later because what we did was so pure and it was honest.
Some love stories look perfect from the outside. Debbie Allen's was one of them. But after decades of keeping the most difficult parts private, she has finally decided to tell the truth about the greatest love of her life and the sacrifices she made to keep it all together. So, what really happened behind one of Hollywood's longest-lasting relationships? And what did Debbie Allen finally reveal about the greatest love of her life? Join us as we uncover the love story that has intrigued fans for years. The set where everything started. The year was 1979, and Debbie Allen was already building a reputation that the entertainment industry was struggling to contain. She was a trained dancer, a powerful stage presence, and someone whose ambition was visible from across a room. The film was called The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh, a basketball comedy that nobody particularly remembers today, but that produced one of the most significant meetings in both of its stars' lives. Norm Nixon was on that set. He was 23 years old, a point guard for the Los Angeles Lakers, and so effortlessly athletic that even in a low-budget basketball comedy, he looked like he belonged in a different frame from everyone around him. He had been drafted 13th overall in the 1977 NBA draft and had already developed a reputation as one of the most technically precise guards in the league, earning the nickname Stormin' Norman for the intensity he brought to the court. He was, by any reasonable measure, exactly the kind of man that a 29-year-old Debbie Allen had no business falling for during a film shoot when she had a career to build and nobody had time for distractions. She fell for him anyway. What the two of them had in common was not immediately obvious from the surface. He was an athlete. She was an artist. He was from Macon, Georgia. She was from Houston, Texas. He operated in the world of professional sports, which runs on a different set of values and priorities from the world of performance and choreography, where she had built everything she had. But underneath those differences was something that would sustain a relationship for more than 4 decades and counting. They liked the same things, not in a superficial way, in a durable way that keeps two people genuinely interested in each other across the long stretches of ordinary life, when the excitement of early romance has settled into something more quiet and more real. They both liked books, movies, liked to travel, and they both loved their children before their children even existed. Both of them coming into the relationship with the orientation of people who understood that family was not just a circumstance, but a commitment. The friendship came first, and the friendship stayed underneath everything that came after it. But before the friendship became a marriage, Debbie Allen had already survived things that would have broken most people before they ever got to the part where love was available to them. What was she carrying when she walked onto that set and met the man who would become her greatest love? The woman who walked onto that set already forged. The thing about Debbie Allen that most people who came to know her through Fame or Grey's Anatomy or her Emmy Award-winning choreography do not fully appreciate is how completely she had been built before any of those things happened. She did not arrive in Hollywood looking for someone to define her. She was already defined by Houston, by dance, by a family that was itself a kind of cultural institution. She was born into a family where excellence was the baseline expectation, rather than an aspiration. Her mother, Vivian Ayers Allen, was a Pulitzer Prize-nominated poet. Her father, Andrew Allen, was a dentist. Her sister is Felicia Rashad, one of the most respected actresses in American television history, best known as Claire Huxtable on The Cosby Show. The household she grew up in was not one where mediocrity was available as an option.
I hear you're an attorney, Mrs. Huxtable. The law.
David, according to the 14th Amendment, everyone is entitled to due process.
She started studying dance at the Houston Foundation for Ballet as a child. She was rejected from the North Carolina School of the Arts and was also rejected from the Houston Foundation for Ballet's main program because of the shape of her body. However, she kept dancing. She went to Howard University. She studied classical ballet, jazz, and Spanish dance. She eventually graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts, moved to New York and started auditioning. Then Broadway found her. She performed in Purlie in 1972. She was nominated for a Tony Award for her role in West Side Story in 1980. She received another Tony nomination for her performance in Sweet Charity in 1986. Between those two nominations, the television series Fame premiered in 1982 and turned her into one of the most recognizable faces on American television. She played Lydia Grant, the dance teacher whose opening speech about paying in sweat was the most watched moment in the show's premiere and became one of the most quoted lines in the history of dance education.
I don't have time for prima donnas. You want to become a dancer? You're going to have to work.
She also choreographed the show and eventually directed multiple episodes of it. She was simultaneously performer, choreographer, and director on one of the most successful musical dramas in television history. This is the woman who walked onto the set of The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh in 1979 and met Norm Nixon. Not a woman looking for someone to complete her, a woman who was already complete, looking for someone who was complete enough to stand beside her, without needing to reduce her to something more manageable. Nixon was that person, and the relationship that developed between them was genuinely built on equality, in a way that celebrity relationships often claim but rarely actually achieve. So what did the beginning of their relationship actually look like, and what almost stopped it before it became the thing it eventually became? The long distance. Being in love with a professional basketball player in the early 1980s, while simultaneously trying to build a career as one of the most ambitious women in entertainment, was not a formula for a relaxed relationship. The NBA season runs from October through June. The travel is constant. The cities change. The attention from other women is relentless and often deliberately aggressive. And Debbie Allen was not the kind of woman who was going to relocate her entire life and career to follow a man on a basketball schedule. They figured it out anyway. Nixon was with the Los Angeles Lakers from 1977 to 1983, which meant Los Angeles was home base, and Los Angeles was also where the entertainment industry lived. The geography was manageable even when everything else about the logistics was not. They built a relationship across the reality of two people who both had demanding careers, both had identities that preceded the relationship, and both were operating at a level of public visibility that made private life genuinely difficult to protect. They eventually got married on April 27, 1984. By then, Nixon had been traded from the Lakers to the San Diego Clippers, which added a geographic complication to a relationship that was already managing significant distance between two careers. He retired from the NBA in 1989 after his career was significantly affected by an Achilles tendon injury. The injury was devastating for someone whose entire professional identity was built around his physical precision and his court vision. He was 33 years old, at what should have been his peak, suddenly facing life without the career that had defined him since childhood. Nixon did not collapse into his misfortune. He pivoted and moved into sports management, eventually starting his own firm, Norm Nixon and Associates, representing athletes and celebrities. He co-founded the Debbie Allen Dance Academy with his wife in 2001 and became its CFO. He found a way to rebuild his professional identity around the person and the partnership he had chosen, which required a particular kind of ego flexibility that not every man, especially not every man who had been Stormin' Norman at the height of his NBA career, possessed. Debbie Allen has described on multiple occasions what it meant to her that he made that transition without bitterness and without making his career loss into her problem. The marriage was already requiring both of them to negotiate between two strong identities, two demanding careers, and the very real pressures of public life as a high-profile couple. Adding the grief of his NBA retirement to that negotiation required something from both of them. They got through it, and getting through it produced something more durable than what had existed before the test. But here is the part of their story that Debbie Allen talked about most directly in her 2024 interview, and that most coverage of their marriage glosses over because the Rocks and Walls version of a love story is less comfortable to write about than the fairy tale version. What exactly happened inside 40 years that almost ended it? The Rocks and the Walls she talked about out loud. Most celebrity couples, when they describe a long marriage in interviews, give you the version that sounds like a retirement community advertisement. We communicate, we support each other, we make time for each other. It is all technically true, and it is also almost entirely useless as a description of what 40 years of sharing a life actually contains. Debbie Allen did not give that version at the Project Angel Food Angel Awards Gala in September 2024. She stood in front of a room full of people who knew who she was, and she described the rocks and the walls. She told People magazine at the event that wherever there have been differences, and there have been over 40 years, they had hit some rocks and hit some walls, but she continued past that admission into the part that made it mean something. At the end of the day, they really loved each other, and they slept together every night, and they loved their family. The specifics of what the rocks and walls contained have not been publicly detailed. What has been documented is the reality of 40-plus years of two high-achieving people, both with strong personalities and both with significant professional demands, building a shared life that included raising children, building a business together, navigating career transitions, and managing the particular pressures that come with being a Black couple of their visibility and stature in an industry that has never been particularly interested in supporting their success. On their 39th anniversary in April 2023, she posted on Instagram describing their marriage as a joyous roller coaster ride of love, friendship, trust, children, debate, and sleeping so close. The sleeping close detail is the one that appears repeatedly across every interview she has given about the marriage, and it is the detail that carries the most weight. It is not about physical proximity. It is about the decision, made consistently over 40 years, to not let the distance created by the rocks and walls become the distance of the bed, to keep choosing the nearness even when the nearness was uncomfortable. Now here is the part of their partnership that most people who know Debbie Allen as a performer have not fully accounted for. The business dimension that turned a marriage into something even more structurally interconnected. So what happened when they built something together that went beyond love? The Dance Academy. Most marriages between high-achieving people create a kind of parallel structure where both people pursue their individual careers while sharing a domestic life. The relationship exists alongside the careers rather than inside them. The arrangement works for plenty of people and produces stable, functional partnerships that hold over time. Debbie Allen and Norm Nixon did not do it that way. In 2001, they co-founded the Debbie Allen Dance Academy in Los Angeles. Nixon became the CFO, while Allen became the artistic and executive director. The academy was built in the Crenshaw district, an economically underserved neighborhood.
From plie, 2, 3, 4, and up.
Director Debbie Allen was
Carr Center and the Debbie Allen Dance Academy.
And its mission from the beginning was to provide professional quality dance training to students who might not otherwise have access to it. Tuition assistance was built into the model. The academy was not designed as a boutique program for wealthy families who could afford premium arts education. It was designed to reach into a community and change what was available there. Building a business with your spouse is one of the fastest ways to test whether the rocks and walls you are capable of surviving together are actually survivable. The stakes are different when a financial decision is also a marital one. They did it anyway, and the academy became something remarkable. It has produced dancers who have gone on to perform with professional companies around the world. It has received philanthropic support from foundations and individual donors who recognized what it was doing in the Crenshaw community. It has become one of the most significant outcomes of the Allen-Nixon partnership, representing the immediate kind of legacy that only gets built when two people bring their full capacities to a shared project rather than keeping their respective strengths separate. Allen has described the Academy as her whole life in multiple interviews, which is an important statement from a woman who has 5 Emmy Awards, 2 Tony Award nominations, a Kennedy Center honor, and a career that spans more than 5 decades of performance, choreography, and direction. That the thing she calls her whole life is also the thing she built with her husband is not an accident. It is the clearest possible expression of what their partnership actually is at its deepest level. They did not just get married and support each other's individual careers. They created something together that neither of them could have created alone. Now here is the part of Debbie Allen's story that does not get enough attention relative to everything else she has accomplished. So what does Debbie Allen, at 77, really have to say about the love of her life? And why does their story hit so differently once you know the full picture? Her greatest love. The thing about Debbie Allen's 2024 statement about her marriage that cut through the noise and stayed in people's minds was not the romantic parts. The romantic parts were expected. She had posted birthday tributes and anniversary dance videos on Instagram for years, and everyone who followed her knew that the warmth between her and Nixon was real and visible and not performed for an audience. What cut through was the honesty about the difficulty. She has described Norman Nixon as the 10 she looks up to, which is a reference to the perfect 10 in athletic scoring and in life. She has described him on Instagram as her love and her forever. These are the versions of Debbie Allen talking about her husband that social media amplifies because they are warm and quotable and confirm what people want to believe about a long marriage between two impressive people who obviously still love each other. But the 2024 People interview at the Angel Awards went somewhere else. It went to the rocks and the walls. It went to the over 40 years of differences. It went to the specific, honest acknowledgement that 40 years of marriage is not 40 years of consistent harmony, and that anyone who tells you it is has either a very short marriage or a very selective memory. She told people that their relationship was born on friendship and commonality, and that those shared fundamentals had given the relationship a foundation that was strong enough to hold through the years when the surface of it was rough. The grandchildren are now part of the picture too. She and Nixon became grandparents, and Allen has described the grandkids as her priority behind the dance academy. The woman who has been building professional empires for 50 years now talks about her grandchildren with the specific warmth of someone who has reached the part of life where the empire is established, and the humans who will carry the legacy forward are the most interesting thing in the room. Nixon rarely speaks publicly about the marriage. His public profile is deliberately low relative to his wife's, which is a choice he appears to have made consciously and maintained consistently across decades of being married to one of the most publicly visible women in American entertainment. He was Stormin' Norman on the court. He is something quieter and more private off it. The man whose competitive intensity made him one of the most effective point guards of his era now serves as the CFO of his wife's dance academy and lets her do the talking in public spaces. That transition is its own kind of love story, told not in words but in choices made consistently across more than 4 decades. The greatest love of Debbie Allen's life, when she tells the truth about it at 77, is not the fairy tale version that social media posts about dancing at anniversaries might suggest. It is something more complicated and more real than that. It is a 40-year relationship built on friendship, shared values, and the willingness of two strong-willed people to keep choosing each other even when the choosing is difficult. At 77 years old, she looked at a room of Hollywood people and said all of that out loud as the actual truth of the life she has been living since the day she met a basketball player on the set of a movie nobody particularly remembers and decided, eventually, that he was the one she was going to build everything with. Do you think friendship is really the secret to a marriage lasting more than 40 years, or does it take something even deeper? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.